Okay, it's 6:35. We'll go ahead and get started. Holy cow. It is such an honor to be here with all 163 and growing of you. Welcome to the launch for the Transparency is Power campaign, which is organized by Act on Mass. What are we doing here? What are we going to be doing over the next 2 or 3 months? We're organizing to build a functioning democracy in the state of Massachusetts, which we don't currently have. A democracy in which we can all participate, our voices are heard. A state government that encourages us to participate instead of discourages, because currently everything's done behind closed doors. With that said, like I said, my name's Ryan. I'm the co-campaign manager for Transparency is Power. Let me go ahead and introduce Erin.
Thanks, Ryan. So I'm Erin, she, her pronouns, and I'm the other co-campaign manager of this campaign. And without further ado, let's kick it off with a couple of slides just to give everyone a brief overview of what this campaign is all about, what we're doing here. So if you want to mind, thank you, Ryan. Okay. So we're going to start this the way we start pretty much every Act on Mass presentation. The Massachusetts State House is broken. In fact, our state government is one of the least transparent in the country. Decisions about which bills move forward and which ones are killed are not made with the public's input in the eye of the public. In fact, they're made in backroom political deals. Our state government really doesn't want us to participate, or at least a lot of the reps in there don't. And they go out of their way to keep us out. And without transparency, there's no accountability, right? If you can't see how your reps are voting or what they're doing, how are they supposed to be accountable to what their constituents believe and want them to do, right? And don't just take our word for it. As you can see here, we actually get an F from the Open States Project, along with just 3 other states, Alabama, Nebraska, and Kentucky. And this broken system is the reason why, or a really big part of the reason why, broadly popular legislation, like you have some examples here on the right, and we'll talk about some examples later, keep dying or languishing in the state house for years or even decades without a final vote.
Okay, let's quickly talk about how this whole system breaks down. So this is a little known fact, secret. At the start of every session in our state government in Beacon Hill, the legislators write a rule book. This rule book, it determines how bills are introduced, debated, and ultimately voted on. Are they public? Are votes not public? And that's written by the legislators themselves at the start of every session. So let's do a little schoolhouse rock. I'll go back to elementary school. I'm sure everyone knows this, but I think it's helpful to highlight 3 things. 1, all lawmaking is done in committee. Writing bills, public testimony. We don't know what happens in committee. Votes in committee aren't public. 2, let's say a bill does escape committee, goes into the floor for a vote. Most votes on the floor are not public, except for the very final ceremonious votes. But everything leading up, we don't know what happens. Lastly, we have no time to review a bill. So we have 24 hours to review final pieces of legislation that impacts millions of people, and 24 hours to read something that's hundreds of pages. So we think these are 3 really big points that cut us out of the process. So what is the Transparency is Power campaign? So we have 3 demands as the new session kicks off in January of the new year. 1, all committee votes should be public. 2, we have 72 hours to review a bill. That's 3 days. Is that, yes, 24 times 3. That's 3 days to review a bill. And then more votes are public on the floor, rule number 3. How are we gonna do this? We're building teams in districts across the state. This same vote happened 2 years ago. It lost 50 to 110. We're going to organize in districts where reps said no. We're going to meet with them, tell them we believe in building a functioning democracy that encourages us to participate instead of discourages. We're going to tell them that, and make these demands, and then escalate awareness in any way we can. Op-eds, 2 meetings leading up to the final vote in January, February. So with that, let me introduce, it's my pleasure to introduce my state representative, Erica Eiderhoven, who is the new rep-elect for Somerville. She's the co-founder of Act on Mass. She is a legendary organizer in transparency work. And like I said, my state representative, Erica Eiderhoven.
Awesome, thank you all so much. Can you all hear me okay?
Bravo, bravo.
All right, yes, amazing. Okay, so first off, thank you all so much for being here. There are 180 people on this call right now from all over Massachusetts. I mean, this is incredible and it's such an honor. So thank you so much for being here. So my name's Erica. I co-founded Act on Mass with Matt Miller because we don't have a functioning democracy in Massachusetts. And through this non-functioning democracy, we have a state house that commits violence. And I say violence because now more than ever, we have a clear mandate to challenge racist power, racist ideas, and racist policies with anti-racist policies, with socialist policies that put the well-being, dignity, and self-determination and agency of working people first. And that means that failure to protect the basic human rights of undocumented immigrants is violence. Failure to fund our schools equitably, especially now, is violence. Failing to close a racial health gap that leads wealthy white people to live 26 years longer than people of color and working class communities, that is violence. Hundreds of thousands of families facing eviction is violence. 1 million people without enough food to eat is violence. And most importantly, forcing people to do non-essential work or work in unsafe working conditions, putting their vulnerable family members or themselves at risk as the only path to survive, because our government and the hoarders of capital put economic growth and padding their already exuberant wealth over our human lives. That is violence. And all of this is happening in Massachusetts, our home, our people, in the wealthiest state in the United States, which is among the wealthiest countries on earth. And under no uncertain terms is this violence a hopeless reality or a woeful mistake. These are decisions. This violence is committed by people who are supposed to be working for you. So powerful people get away with this violence in the dark. And we are here tonight to shine light and break through that complacency, that complete lack of accountability. Transparency is power because it gives you all voice, agency, and power and people to ensure your elected legislators work for you. And without those conditions, we don't have a functioning democracy. And putting power back in your hands is not what most legislators want. And I'm about to say some spicy things here, but what they want is for you to show up during election time and be their foot soldiers, only there to phone bank for them. And sometimes this foot soldier thinking spills over into election advocacy, legislators telling you to call your rep, email your rep, come to a scheduled lobby day at my convenience, at my office, during the workday and hit that drum and rah, rah, rah for my performative politics. I swear some legislators truly look at advocacy groups and unions as their local rent-a-crowd, and we are not that. I say foot soldiers because foot soldiers don't disobey power or command. Foot soldiers means that I, the legislator, am entitled to my throne, to my position, to my power, and I'm entitled to your support. And in a functioning democracy, I am not entitled to anything. I am expected to uphold and fight for what I campaigned on. And anything short of that, it's up to the people to decide if I get to stay or if I go. And we are not here to be foot soldiers. We are here to organize, and organizing is putting power back into your hands, in the people's hands. And in a vibrant democracy, holding your legislator accountable means you organize outside of their command and their control. It means putting us, the legislators, in uneasy situations because we accepted that mandate when we ran for office on progressive issues, and we must challenge power above us on behalf of our people. And I believe in every single one of you to fight for the functioning democracy our lives critically depend on right now. And so let's get started. Thank you so much for having me and sharing this space with me. Thank you so much.
Erica, you always never fail to amaze us. That was wonderful. We are not correct. Yes, rent an organizers or like rent a crowd. We are here to make change, to build a functioning democracy. We are just waiting on our next speaker, Travis. Do we know if Rep. Sabadosa has arrived yet?
Spoiler alert.
Spoiled, yeah, not yet, but it will build tension for when she does.
Well, we know there are important votes that are happening tonight, so that's likely the case.
Oh yeah, Erica, do you want to talk a little bit about what's going on tonight?
Yeah, sure, I can talk about that. So right now they are voting on the Roe Act. So this is another form of violence by withholding abortion access. That is a form of violence, right? Forcing a 16-year-old who is in need of abortion to go before a judge to get permission to have abortions. That is a form of violence, right? And we actually have, surprisingly, one of the least progressive abortion laws in New England. All of our neighboring states actually already have judicial bypass, which is what they're voting on right now with the Roe Act. And so especially now more than ever with what's happening in the Supreme Court and federally, this is really critical that we pass this. And so they are trying to pass that through the budget. I'll also share too that this week, this is something just a preview for next budget, but there was a fight for progressive revenue. Progressive revenue is essentially having wealthy, rich shareholders, corporations, and wealthy individuals pay their fair share. We actually have some of the the most regressive taxation in the country, which means working class people pay a larger share of their income in taxes than wealthy people. And so there was a vote earlier this week to have a tax on unearned income. That's when you're an investor and you hold investments and you get taxed on the investment that, had a return. That tax is lower than if you work on 1 hard days of work, right? For your labor is taxed more than holding wealth, right? And this is exactly an example of regressive tax. Unfortunately, it did get voted down, but that is another thing too we'll be organizing around next spring because we absolutely need this progressive revenue. Like without it, we're not funding our schools, public health, climate crisis. All of those things rely on raising revenue. Everything else is window dressing. So anyway, that is what's happening right now, is that there is a budget process vote happening over this week, and tonight they're voting on the Roe Act, and so we'll see what happens with that.
Okay, and we should, I guess we're still waiting. So no, Erica, maybe talk about when you starting Act on Mass and when you realized that transparency was kind of the answer of like what we needed to help, one key ingredient to fix the State House.
Yeah, I mean, I think, so we founded this right towards the end of the 2018 session. So very similar place to where we are now 2 years ago. And in that session, there were a number of things that fell through. Safe Communities Act, right? We were 2 years deep into Trump and we had done nothing as a state to protect immigrants. And this was a very boilerplate bill that the Senate passed unanimously and the House failed to take up for a vote. We also failed to equitably fund our schools. We have some of the biggest racial disparities across the state in our public school funding. And the fact that our school funding relies on property taxes is a form of how you keep generational wealth, defining whether you get a functioning school district or not. That funding completely fell through. And then also there was a grand bargain over raising the minimum wage to $15, which removed time and a half and also left behind tipped workers. Tipped workers still work sub-minimum wage jobs right now. And so those things all fell through, kind of similar to what's happening right now. And we were kind of realized, like, okay, all of these bills, they are different issues. They're all, important key progressive issues around people's rights, but they're all going down the same way without really any information for us as voters to know why did this fail, right? And there's sort of this ongoing narrative that it's the speaker, it's House leadership, it's the governor, and we'll learn in the training with Act on Mass when you join us. I won't spoil it too much, but that that's not the only, that's kind of an easy narrative to always constantly blame up, oh, if only the feds would bail us out, things like that, right? And we're like the wealthiest state in the country, and expecting the feds to bail us out. I mean, these are all, excuses. And at the end of the day, your reps work for you, right? And the fact that there was this lack of transparency connecting each rep's individual responsibility to fight for our rights, or even like with all those issues that I just shared with you, if you ask me which rep is fighting for education, like public education, right? I can't tell you. I genuinely can't tell you. There aren't any critical votes because those votes get taken either unanimously or not at all. And so that protects the membership. And in fact, one thing I shared with people was that in 2019, when we tracked all the votes, my current rep, Denise Provo, who's incredibly progressive, incredibly values driven, there were only 5 votes that distinguished her and a Democrat who thinks Black Lives Matter is a terrorist organization, right? That's how little information there is out there for us to act on and to make demands of our reps. And so that's really how it started, was just seeing, hey, these are the same patterns happening. They're all dying in the House. And so that's how we got started, and we've learned a lot, and we've grown, and we now have 190 people here. So this is exciting. And I see that Steve is here, so I'm going to stop now and pass it over to Steve.
And pass it over to my honor to introduce Rep-elect Steve Owens. He's a representative, will be for the 29th Middlesex District, representing Watertown and Cambridge. Steve is signed our Voters Deserve to Know pledge and was an Act on Mass endorsed candidate and is a transparency champion. Rep-elect Owens.
Hi, everybody. Thank you so much. I'm sorry that I had to pop in and then pop back out again. I'm going from a Cub Scout meeting to a Democratic State Committee meeting. So I may see some of you at the other one. I probably didn't see any of you at the previous one. So, but thank you for that. I just wanted to say a few words. As Ryan said, I am following the footsteps of a great transparency champion, Representative Jonathan Hecht, who has been a mentor of mine and has really been somebody who has been at the forefront of transparency issues, even when it was just him, against the tide back a few short years ago. And he's somebody that paid the price for his stands against the leadership. And when I watched him and his struggles, with the leadership and with the culture of the House, it really took to heart, how much the organization itself needs to be reformed. So when Act on Mass came about, I was really excited to see a group of people who we're very interested in transparency. And I will tell you that in my district, transparency is really at the forefront of people's minds. Now, part of that is because we've had a transparency champion in that seat for the past 12 years. But I'll tell you, what led me to run for office was because I believe that we need to take bold action to reduce the impact of climate change, to solve our transportation crises, to make sure that everybody has access to affordable housing, to a quality education, to a good place to live, to protection during these times now when we're still 9 months into a pandemic. But to accomplish those goals, we need a legislature that's really committed to transparency in government. It's essential to building public trust and governing effectively. I'm really excited to be part of this growing group of people who are really dedicated to improving accountability at the State House. And I'll say one more thing before I have to run off. But so in Watertown, we had a question 4 on the ballot, which was advising the representative of the 29th Middlesex District, which will be me, that they were in favor of putting committee votes on the website. So committee votes are not on the website, House's website. I'm sure that you've talked about it before I got on, and if not, you'll talk about it later. In Watertown, throughout the district, that got 92% of the vote. 92% of the people who had to flip over, read through the other ballot questions and get to that last question, 92% of those people said, yes, we want this to pass. We want you to do this. And I can't get 92% of anything, of anybody to agree on anything. So this was higher than the climate change ballot question. It got more votes despite being on the back of the ballot at the very bottom. In big letters, it says this is a non-binding resolution. Despite all that, it got more votes than Joe Biden and Kamala Harris in Watertown. And I'm pretty sure in Cambridge also. I don't have the precinct breakdown for the Watertown or for the Cambridge portion, but I would venture to say that this is something that can really unite people both on the conservative and liberal sides of our political divide. So I'm really happy to be part of this organization. And I really think that it's important that we move forward as strongly as we can to make sure that, that our constituents are able to fully hold our elected officials accountable. Oh, Kathy, hi. Thanks.
Thank you. No, thank you, Rep. Owens. Thank you for your continued
There's
leadership.
Alan.
Thank you for your, oh no, you're fine. Thank you for your continued leadership on representation or on transparency. And we're excited to continue to work together.
Happy to be here.
Perfect. I will take it from there. Yeah. Thank you so much, Rep-elects Eiderhoven and Owens. It's a bummer that it looks like Rep. Sabadoza got caught up in some House matters, but I'm sure we will be hearing from her shortly. But now we're going to do a little pivot to talking about some very real concrete examples of legislation that have gotten stymied in the House despite broad support. And to talk about progressive revenue and the challenging history that that's had in the House, I'm going to bring up our next guest. So it's my pleasure to introduce a genuine legend in the world of Massachusetts activism. Plus, I noticed the other day that Obama follows him on Twitter. Everybody, John Cohn of Progressive Math.
Thank you for that. Thank you for that introduction. And thank you all for being here, because it is kind of, and thank you to kind of Rep-elect Eiderhoven, Rep-elect Owens, whom I will see shortly at the state committee meeting that I will go to again. And one thing that I think is kind of central we're talking about here that kind of Erin set up well is that strong gap that we end up seeing between policies that we know are popular, that they pull well, they're kind of common sense, they're intuitive for people, what actually happens. When it comes to kind of the behind, actually, I'll tell one quick story that shows you about the kind of secretive nature of the House, and then span out of it a little bit more about this. So back, as you may all remember, back in 2017, when Republicans had their trifecta in Washington, which thankfully they will not have at least two of those next year, passed a kind of a large tax giveaway geared mainly toward shoveling money toward the rich and toward large corporations. Because it was so extreme, one provision that they put in there was to allow states to tax some of the money that's offshored abroad. So like a company that like is based in your state that's nevertheless not paying any taxes because they've offshored all of that to pay lower rates abroad. And so that federal tax bill said, okay, states can get some of this money as a way of addressing how much they would be losing otherwise. In last legislative session, the Massachusetts legislature decided to exempt, I believe, 95% of that from taxation. So money that Massachusetts companies are offshoring, that the federal government said, that the Republican federal government, mind you, had said, it's okay, you can tax, like, go ahead and tax this if you want to. And not a single person is willing to claim ownership for having slipped that into the supplemental budget in which that got in. That got in there. And this speaks to some of the few issues that we'll be talking about here, that because the supplemental budget was hastily prepared and everybody voted it for soon after, nobody really got a chance to read what they were voting on. And since nobody's doing the due diligence to read all of the pages of what they're voting on, which even if they wanted to do their due diligence, they probably couldn't, nobody spotted that until after the fact. And whoever added it doesn't want to claim it. And that kind of speaks to a broader think about how what we do see time and time again is that lack of transparency benefits the special interests who are always able to get behind closed doors, no matter how tightly they may appear closed to those of us in the general public as well. And kind of when it comes, as the slide I think shows well, is that when it comes to taxation, there's a major gap between what we think of about Massachusetts, what we want as residents and voters and active citizens in Massachusetts, and the reality. Because many of us have heard Massachusetts referred to as Taxachusetts by other states. However, we don't, like, as that one chart shows well, that our state has slashed state and local taxes significantly over the past few decades, especially since ballot initiatives in the late 90s, early 2000s. And that because of those ballot initiatives, we're losing about $4 billion a year in tax revenue in the state that our legislature could be fighting to recoup for the investments that would mean in public education and public infrastructure, et cetera. And for the most part, they choose not to. And again, to the point of, this isn't even the value of having votes in general, as one of the core points here is about that kind of speakers will be talking about with votes in committee. I ended up thinking about the vote that happened a few days ago, where Representative Mike Connolly of Cambridge had brought his amendment on increasing the tax on unearned income. And that's the kind of like your stocks, bonds, dividends. It's not your it's not your 401k or pension fund or wages, but all of that income that people get because they don't actually do work. They're just making that money off of others. And it was just to raise it to the level that it had been about a decade ago, if I remember correctly. And only 30 representatives voted for it. And some of those representatives who voted against it had co-sponsored it. Some of those representatives who voted against it had publicly pledged to their constituents that they supported that. And having those opportunities where you get people on record are important for us as activists, because it shows us the work we actually have to do, right? Because if you think about and have a vote like that, there are many people that their constituents might think, yes, they are champions of these policies. They have told me that they support this, but when push came to shove, they backed down and folded immediately. So the more data points that we have, the more we're able to pressure them.
Amazing. Thanks, John. Sorry to have cut you off. We have one, Rep Sabadosa just joined us.
No problem.
Make sure that she had 1 minute. So sorry.
She's a great person to pass it on to, so.
Yeah, so it was my honor to introduce Rep Sabadosa, who is a transparency champion and gave her inaugural speech on transparency 2 years ago in the State House.
Uh-oh.
And we might have lost her.
Rep Sabadosa, are you there? She's on the list.
Are you calling me on me now?
Yes.
Okay, I'm sorry. Here
Welcome.
I am. Apologies. I am trying to monitor a session and be on the call at the same time, which I'm not succeeding very well at. So I'm happy to be joining you here this evening. Very quickly, we are about to vote on the Roe Act, which is a really exciting moment for all of us and something that I've been waiting for a really, really long time. I was asked to talk a little bit about my inaugural speech and why I chose to give a speech about, I'm so sorry. I'm just gonna turn that down. There we go. Perfect. All right. So why I would choose to give a speech about making committee votes public. And so, you know, before you're elected, we had a lot of conversations about what could possibly make the House more transparent and make it easier for people who are trying to follow debates to participate in those debates. And I had been an advocate before I was elected. I had tried to follow legislation. I tried to understand what was happening to legislation. I'm a huge proponent of Medicare for All. Always wondered, how is this being voted on in committee? Is it being voted on at all, or is it just being sent to study? The Safe Communities Act was another bill that I was really, really passionate about, tried to follow, and felt like we just kept running up against walls. So, you know, as a non-elected official, it made a lot of sense to say, all right, well, committee votes, because the committee must be voting on these things, right? And it will be helpful to find out what is going on so that we can do better advocacy in the future. I don't know if Harmony Wu is on this call or if people know Harmony Wu, but she's a great activist and she always says, get receipts. Like, don't just have your legislator tell you that they did it, make sure that they actually give you some evidence that they did it. And so a committee vote is a great receipt. So I gave my inaugural speech on the topic. The amendment did not pass, obviously, but I got to go through my first session, and I had a really interesting experience where I was on one committee where the chair was very public about votes. Reporters called, anyone called, and he would tell you exactly how people voted. I was on another committee where the chair was not as transparent, and reporters would call and ask, and he would say, that information is not public. And it's because committees get to make their own decisions about this. So there are some committees that are doing this right. They are being open, they will tell you, others not so much. And it does make it really hard. Now, I don't think that passing this amendment is going to change the whole culture of the House, but it's a tiny little step in the right direction. It's a tiny little step in the direction of we should be telling people things. We should be open with what we're doing. A lot of times we get lists of bills and we're asked to vote on them, and there are so many bills about creating a new license plate or naming a bridge that, quite frankly, no advocate really wants to see exactly how everybody voted, and you're either voting yes or no, up or down. But the very fact that we're saying there's something about the legislative process that should be really secret, like a committee vote, just feels wrong. And so I think that it's worth continuing to push. It's worth continuing to have the conversation. I mean, honestly, we should just be at a place where every chair says, yep, we're going to tell you what we're doing because that's right. That's how they do it in Congress. That's how they do it in the Senate. It's not a very big ask. And it is part of getting that ball rolling in the direction of making sure the people of Massachusetts know how to participate in advocacy in effective ways, and they know what's really happening at the State House. So I apologize for being a little bit scattered. It is a really busy night, but I'm happy to be here with you, and I'm certainly happy to chat with anybody at any point, but I am going to go vote now.
Thank you, Rep. Savadosa. That was amazing. I can think of no better example of a real co-governing representative than someone who's in session and talking to advocates at the same time. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Erin, should we go back to our story time from the field examples of how the State House fails us?
Examples, stories from the field. Okay, great. So we've got another special guest speaker. We just have an all-star lineup this evening, which is insane. So now I would like to introduce Vatsiri Sivangsai, who is the Director of Organizing at MIRA, and she's going to be speaking about the Safe Communities Act. And I've also just realized within the past 5 minutes, I think I phone banked for you for your city council race a couple years ago. Anyways, you have the
guys.
Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. I'm Vatsiri Sivangsai, as Erin mentioned. I am presenting in my individual capacity and sharing a little bit about some of the bills that touch our immigrant communities and could be very impactful for our immigrant communities, but that the House has really failed us on this. We're showing a little bit about 4 different bills. The Trust Act, which was in 2013, that has now transitioned to the Safe Communities Act, which that transition happened in 2017. It's currently stuck in Ways and Means as of this July. The Work and Family Mobility Act as well, and the Data Disaggregation Bill, which started in 2017. And as you see, all of them are in Ways and Means. The Safe Communities Act really is important for immigrant communities because it blocks the state police from acting on behalf of the federal immigration officers. And then for the driver's license bill, the Work and Family Mobility Act, it gives state residents the ability to apply for a driver's license and feel comfortable and safe driving and feeling that they won't get pulled over, and then being then in jail and incarcerated and then deported. So both of these bills that I just mentioned really provides a safer community for immigrants and assurance that their families can stay together. The data disaggregation bill is really important in that it disaggregates the data and requires the state to disaggregate the data in race and ethnicity. And as many folks may know, there's just not a lot of information beyond like the big race categories. So, you know, Asians, Blacks, Hispanic or Latino, depending on, you know, which terminology the agency uses. And then because of that, you just can't really dive deep into understanding what are the various issues, health issues within the immigrant population and unique within each ethnic group. As we're showing a little bit more about the driver's license bill here, which you know, other states have passed, and states that are not as progressive as Massachusetts have passed a driver's license bill because it's very critical for families to sustain their livelihoods so that folks could get to work and businesses to be sustainable as well. One thing that I like to point out, because I think that you have heard from many people that transparency is key, right, to both communications for advocates with the committee members. But here I want to point out that for immigrants, since language is already a barrier, when you try to put in a system that is confusing and frustrating, it actually suppresses the immigrant community. Right, whether or not you're a citizen or not a citizen, if you're in a mixed household, but because of barrier of languages and also cultural differences. So a lot of immigrants that are our most vulnerable immigrants come to the United States for a better, safer and living situation. For example, for me, you know, I came over as a refugee immigrant with my parents, and it was because of the Vietnam War. So if you can imagine, there wasn't a lot of transparency during that time. So if you just put a person who comes from an immigrant background like that, and then try to explain to them, will you come and advocate for it with us at the State House? And then try to explain to them that, oh, we might not ever, you know, get the information we need in order to move this bill past, or for you to be able to explain it to your families and friends to come and advocate for us. I mean, that's just an additional barrier that's unique to folks like immigrants who have barriers such as language and have suffered discrimination and a lot of times police here in the US and in their former country. So that's what I want to highlight. You know, we got to think beyond just what the committee is, but, you know, how do we communicate to our community when there's lack of transparency, and how that better communication and better transparency will allow all of us to have a stronger voice, because we feel safer being there among all advocates and community leaders and elected leaders.
Awesome. Thank you so much. We've got one more example from the field, as it were, and it is my pleasure to introduce Ella McDonald, who is actually one of our regional organizers on this campaign. And Ella is also a Tufts student and a member of the Sunrise Movement in Boston, and she's going to be talking about how the State House has failed to tackle the climate crisis. You got the floor, Ella.
Thanks so much, Erin. I'm truly just like so thrilled to see how many people turned out to this call tonight. Like really like gives me a lot of hope, and it was really exciting to see. Like Erin said, my name's Ella. I go to Tufts, but I'm taking time off. It's complicated. I'll talk about it more in my speech. And I'm an organizer with Sunrise Movement, and I'm really happy to be here. Yeah, I'm here today because I know that I and many of us, probably all of us on this call, feel the urgency of the climate crisis. Yet year after year, since 2008, our legislators here in Massachusetts have failed to pass any significant climate legislation. In 2008, I was 8 years old. I was wearing my little like Obama t-shirt. I was like knocking doors for Obama with my mom. 2008. I need our elected officials to feel the urgency that I and so many of us feel around the climate crisis, because frankly, if they were feeling this urgency, they would have passed another bill since 2008. To illustrate this urgency that I feel, I'm thinking back to this moment I had about a year ago now, where the single passing thought that I had completely kind of arrested me and made me deeply feel the urgency that we're facing with the climate crisis. I had seen all the IPCC reports that we have 11 years left, all the like I was organizing with Sunrise, but what really did it for me, what really moved me, was actually like a simple thought I had one morning while I was in the shower. I had just woken up, it was sometime in the winter, and the hot water had literally barely hit my shoulders. I was still a bit groggy. And for some reason, the thought that entered my mind was, big election year, 2020. If something drastic doesn't change in this next year with this election cycle, and the way that our elected officials are addressing the climate crisis, I probably won't have kids. I probably won't feel that by the time that I want to have children, it'll be ethical for me to bring children into this world. This thought completely arrested me. I couldn't focus in classes. Everything felt so pointless when you're told you're preparing for a future, but like that future isn't even a given. Like having these thoughts sitting down of like, oh my God, like the world is on fire, what's happening? And then like trying to do like a sociology paper wasn't working. And this thought led me to take time off of school and to throw down for the 2020 elections, because honestly, this feels like one of our last shots where we can really get things right. I've worked 5 different election cycles in 4 different states in the past like 8 or 9 months. And yeah, New Hampshire and North Carolina were important because they're swing states. And yes, Massachusetts is solidly blue, but the current plan our legislature has us on track to get to 100% renewable energy by 2090. And that was celebrated as a success. I'll say that again. Our plan here in Massachusetts has us on track to get to 100% renewable energy by 2090, and that was celebrated as a success. I don't want to be telling my kids, when you are maybe 40, like when my kids are 40 or 50 years old, maybe by then we'll get to 100% renewable energy. That is not sufficient. When you feel this fierce urgency, maybe you feel it yourself, when you know that you have put your body, your mind, your education, your health, and your safety on the line this whole year, and then to hear your elected officials talking about 2090 like it's a win, that is frustrating as hell, to put it very lightly. Elected officials who here in Massachusetts, they love to say, we love the Green New Deal, we love climate action, young people are the future, the youth will lead. You are so important. Thank you so much for being an activist, for the work you do. It's so inspiring. But what they won't say is that they'll fight for you. I feel furious, but looking around at all the faces on this call, I feel a little less afraid for my future, because I know at the end of the day, we are the majority. And if our elected officials aren't feeling the urgency of the climate crisis, they will surely feel the urgency when we show them there are enough of us to cost them their job. So let me be very clear that our state representatives have failed my generation, have failed all of us. And without knowing how they vote, we aren't able to hold them accountable. But there's power in this virtual room. There's power when we remember we are the ones who have the ability to hold our reps accountable to change. We are the vast, overwhelming majority of Massachusetts constituents who believe that we need to act now on climate. So I thank you all for being with us here tonight. I thank you for being in this fight with us. And yeah, together we are so powerful. So thank you for being here.
Wow. I just want to take a moment to say thank you so much to the 3 incredible activists who just gave those examples of the fights that they've been fighting for months or years to actually deliver progressive, needed policies to the people of Massachusetts. So thank you, John. Thank you, Vatsity. Thank you, Ella, for everything that you've done and everything you will continue to do. And with that, I'm going to turn it back over to my colleague, Ryan.
Thanks, Erin. Need to take a deep breath after that. That was amazing. Vatsity, John, Ella. I think there's no better example of how our leaders look us in the eye and lie to us, bold-faced, straight-faced lies that they have our best interest, they want us to participate, than how they fail us on climate crisis, which is the existential threat of our lives. So let's recap a little bit exactly how the system fails us. We have a heat map, or sort of like power map. And we use this a lot to try and understand, or to try and like illuminate exactly how the State House lets us down. So you can see how democracy should work. John Cohn talked a lot about this, like there shouldn't be a gap between what the public wants and what legislators do and what our government does. But in fact, that gap is quite wide. So you see this woman in the diagram, she drops a ballot at the ballot box, she votes on election day, but because there's no transparency, her voice is stolen from her. And in this gap that John talked about, several of our speakers have talked about, it's filled by corporate dollars that are pernicious, result in not a democracy, but a $1, one vote government system. And this results in years of delay of bills that impact all of our lives and result in a very weak representation. And this is not a democracy. So as we think about our solution, like the point of this entire campaign, of all the work that we're doing, we really believe that filling this void with people, with constituents who are engaged in civic engagement, who are building a state government that encourages civic engagement, wants our voices to be heard. That's what we're trying to build. We think the way to do that, what sort of like the system needs a little bit more of, is all of us. And a lot of people like to blame the electorate or voters for low participation or turnout. I think that's madness. I don't know anyone in this country, in the state, that wants less of a voice in how our government functions. And if there is any lack of participation, it's because the State House is broken and doesn't want us to participate. So you can see this arrow, and what we're doing here on this campaign is we're taking the voice straight to the politician and kind of working around this transparency, and at the same time fixing the smokescreen that is transparency. So we really believe that it's not enough to just elect your candidates. That's like step one of democracy. You have to keep the pressure on, and bills come when you keep the heat on and you keep pressuring your legislator. And part of this campaign, that means we'll have a meeting with our representative. We'll continue to escalate. We'll strategize on our district teams. We'll build community on those teams. But something that I find to be really encouraging, there's this quote I'm sure we've all heard, that never doubt a small group of thoughtful, committed individuals can change the world. The Margaret Mead quote. In fact, it's the only thing that ever has. Well, there's a lot of really good data behind that. If you look at movements of the last century, nonviolent movements, the civil rights movement, you see that if it only takes, anytime there was 3.5% of the population that was engaged in an election, in a political movement, in a civil rights movement, all demands were met if you have 3.5% of that population continuously putting pressure onto their elected officials. That gives me a lot of hope that we don't need the whole world. We just need a dedicated group of individuals that are willing to try to bring more people into the political process, but then also consistently like keep the heat on, stay engaged, and not fall asleep. And that's why we're here tonight. So I'll turn it over to Erin to talk about exactly what we're doing on the campaign.
Okay, so we know from Ryan that we only need 3.5% of us, but what are we actually doing? Basically, the number one ask that we're asking everyone here to do tonight, if you haven't already, is sign up to be a part of your district team. So we've got the link here. We'll drop the link in the chat. What this means is you are signing up to be a group of people who get trained by me, Ryan, or someone else from Act on Mass on how to have an effective lobbying pressure conversation with your rep. And we're going to get them on the books regarding those 3 demands we talked about earlier, right? Committee votes, reducing the threshold from 16 to 8 reps for a recorded floor vote and a 72-hour minimum to read bills. But it doesn't end there, right? Just like the last slide was talking about escalation. If the rep says no, that doesn't mean that we give up and disband. We can talk about different strategies and all the other different tactics in our toolbox that we can use to put pressure on our reps to get them to yes. And I think I'll go for the next slide. Beautiful. So the other thing that we're asking everyone to do tonight, other than join up for join their district team, is to get other people to also join their district teams, right? So some quick math, we are aiming to have around 50 constituent legislator meetings as a part of this campaign. We would like to have around 20 advocates, that's you, that's us, that's everyone here, in those meetings. And that's 1,000 people. And there are 164 people on this call right now. There was, I think, 180 earlier. There's a couple more people who signed up that didn't make it. If everyone brings like 6, 7, 8 friends, colleagues, coworkers, neighbors into this campaign and gets them signed up to their district teams, then we can achieve our goal. Then we will get 20 plus people in legislator constituent meetings across the state, really turning up the heat on legislators and showing them that there are more of us than there are of them. And so in terms of recruitment, we're not just leaving you alone without any help. We've got a little district team recruitment toolkit. We can send this out to everyone. If you have already gotten an onboarding email, you've already gotten this. But we're going to be sending a follow-up email at the end of this event to everyone who RSVP'd. So you have all of these links in there as well. And that includes a recruitment script with handy talking points about how to talk about the campaign, how to pitch it to your friends and neighbors who might be nervous to maybe meet with their rep or don't know too much about the State House, a volunteer flyer that kind of whittles everything into a quick one-page description. And then of course the web page, and the end all be all is really getting folks signed up to the web page, because that is how we put them on our big, beautiful spreadsheet with all of the district teams that we're trying to fill up. And that is what we need from you. Oh, except one other very silly, easy thing, which is promote the campaign. This is something you can do right now. So easy. We're on Twitter, we're on Facebook. We are, as of today, on Instagram in the year of 2020. Look at us. Look at us. We've got one post. It's about this campaign. Go like it and put it on your story or whatever you do. And included in the email that we're going to send after this will be a couple of our posts. So you can just retweet, repost those and get the word out. The more people we have involved in this, the better shot we have of actually changing these rules in January. And that's it, folks.
Thanks, Erin.
We're coming up on the hour.
Yeah, so we're quickly approaching 7:30. We just packed a lot into an hour. Some beautiful speeches, some good organizing strategy. To quickly recap, we're organizing in districts across the state. Join your district team. Travis, I think you already dropped the sign up. My inbox is blowing up. Good thing I turned off notifications. Already 45 people have signed up in the last couple of minutes. So that's a good start. Join your district teams. And we will follow up this evening with an email that has this toolkit that you can use to recruit more people to join their district teams. Each district team will get a dedicated Act On Mass organizer. The organizer for your district team will be in touch as soon as you sign up within a day or two to start to strategize for your district strategy. And we will we'll take it from there. And don't forget to also, our posts, we have posts live on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. Go ahead and share those tonight or tomorrow, and we'll send this around.
I'll add one thing I forgot to mention, which is some of you are like me and live in the 27th Middlesex or the 29th Middlesex or some other, maybe Rep. Sabadoza's district. And you're thinking, okay, well, I don't need to pressure, Rep. Sabadoza to sign this. She's obviously already in favor of it. Well, that doesn't mean we don't need your help. That just means we're going to need your help in a little bit of a different way. It'll be focused less on training you on how to pressure your representative and more helping us recruit other people in those districts that are target districts. So I think the next time that we're going to do a kind of big event like this is going to be focused on those of us in allied rep districts, or also districts, Bob DeLeo's district. We're probably not going to try to pressure the Speaker of the House to make the State House more transparent. So if you're in Winthrop, we still want you. So keep your eyes peeled on your inboxes for further information about what to do if you don't live in one of our target districts. Barbara's going to be huge. Sorry, I'm just seeing some Barbara people. She's a target district.
Okay, well, that's all we got. We will be in touch. We'll follow up with all the links and everything you need. Please join your district team. And we're really excited to organize and build a democracy that functions, that invites our voices to participate, opening up the closed doors of the State House. Thanks, everyone. Have a really wonderful night. We'll see you soon.